Hello and welcome to the Zurich Zone. My name is Nitya Bhutani, and today I'm joined by Matt Reilly, our Chief Operating Officer for Zurich in Asia Pacific. And we're going to be talking about his 26-year-long career with Zurich and counting, that's the key part, in insurance, and the changes that he's witnessed within the industry, within Zurich, the changing customer expectations, market dynamics, as well as the changing role of tech and data. Matt, great to have you here today. Thank you for joining us.
It's great to be here, and looking forward to chatting with you.
So tell us a little bit about your background. 26 years in insurance, your first job. Did you wake up one day and be like, today I'm going to change the face of insurance and join Zurich? How did you go about it?
Not really. No, I mean, I kind of fell into insurance. Really, I'd finished university. I didn't really know what I want to do. I'd kind of took some casual jobs for a while, but eventually my father said I really needed to get a proper career. So I did economics and accounting at university, and I felt the professional qualification would really suit me well. So I was looking for companies that were offering sort of an accountancy qualification graduate training program. I didn't want to be in the accountancy firms. I wanted to be in a real business, and Zurich had a fabulous graduate program that I found just one day in one of the national papers, and I applied for that and probably went through the most rigorous interview of all my career was to get that first job at Zurich as a graduate trainee.
So what was the interview like?
We had various stages through an initial stage, I think because several thousand applied for it, and went through various phone interviews and then tests. And then ended up at a 2 or 3 day assessment center with 40 or so people there doing presentations and other business skill events. So it was a pretty intense. And I'm really glad that I think at the end of it, 2 of us got chosen. So myself and my future wife. So.
Oh, wow. So the biggest takeaway from the graduate program was your wife.
Well, but that was certainly one of them, yes. I didn't know at the time, clearly, but a few years later, that's what happened.
And how long was this graduate program?
So we did 3 years, which meant I was able to go through different parts of the business. So in retail business, in commercial business, I also spent some time in the audit area. So I really got a good rounding of things, but from a finance point of view. And then I spent a few years understanding the finance performance of the business and how the financial dynamics of the business worked, which I think is a great foundation for anybody to just understand what's driving the financials of the business.
Right. And over the last 26 years, you've gone from finance to transformation to operations to technology as well. And you've kind of seen the evolution of not just Zurich's business, but also the insurance industry from all of these different angles. So maybe just talk us through a little bit of what that evolution has looked like for you.
Yeah, I say I've been around sort of 25, 26 years, and I look at sort of 3 time horizons. From when I first started, it was really around the sort of towards the end of the dot-com boom, but a lot of insurance businesses looking at how do we use the internet? How do we use the internet in insurance? How do we use the websites? And bear in mind, this is before smartphones. This is when people were just using their desktop PCs and very slow internet, and
right.
And people were not sure how to use this. But there was a lot of talk about it completely disrupting agents and brokers and how the industry was going to work. But in that early phases, there was a lot of just trying to work out how to use the websites and how to take insurance in a different way to consumers. I think the second phase was more about how sort of mid-sized companies started to bring different solutions that would mean that we could digitize or enhance how insurance was provided through brokers and agents as well as direct to consumers. And then a final phase was where we are now, which is in the ecosystems and multiple startups and multiple people playing in this space. So all those 3 phases have very different focus areas and different ways in which they've shaped the industry, I think, over the last quarter of a century.
Right. And to what you just talked about, right? In phase one, you kind of alluded to it that with the dot-com boom, it was almost as if, we were going to be able to disintermediate the industry. But even when you look at it now, brokers and agents still dominate. So that hasn't fully happened yet. And they still own the relationship. And now with ecosystems and startups coming in, do you see more of a risk when it comes to these customer relationships?
I don't think there's I think everyone has a role to play in this, and I think that in those three phases that I've seen, every whether it was between the customer, the insurer, and the distributor, everyone found a way to use the new technology and tools and the new way of working to enhance what they were doing, and enhance what they could do for the customer. So, I think in the current phase we're in. It really is about how we use the connectivity of bringing different services together so that either the insurer or the distributor or both of us together can provide a simpler, easier way of engaging on insurance. I think if I think about it, in the early days when technology was being used to connect insurers and distributors digitally through integration. I mean, these were the very early APIs, and we talk a lot about APIs now, but they were existing there where previously customers would work with brokers to fill out forms, and those forms would go through the brokers and they'd come through into the insurer, and those papers would go backwards and forwards. We started to digitize that essentially through APIs. And so we were able to make things much quicker and faster and more accurate, even in those early days of using technology.
Yeah, things we kind of take for granted now, right? Because it happens seamlessly.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I think it is not that long ago. I mean, I remember going into we had a specialist yacht insurance company in the UK, and still do. But when I first went there in the late 90s, they still had their rating tables in a big log rating book on the table. It was kind of in the table in the middle of this room, and the underwriter would walk up and look down all the detailed information and note down all the numbers of the different rating calculations he needed to do. Go back to his desk and get out the calculator and work out the premiums he was going to charge like that. I mean, that, and within a few years that had changed where technology could then put all those roles and ratings into some rules engine that then he could then input data and then get those premiums out. And that all happened sort of late 90s, early 2000s, just with the introduction of technology.
Yeah, and now you even have like startups that help you with live data to actually feed directly into your underwriting and pricing models, right? It's almost parametric insurance. That's the level it's evolved into. But okay, and then to your point around ecosystems, right? It's been an interesting topic. Everyone in the industry is trying to kind of wrap their heads around it. We've seen some successes in China. You spent some time in Beijing as well when you came over from the UK. But we haven't seen a lot of offshoots necessarily the way that it's been successful in China outside of China as such.
Yeah, I think China has a unique kind of position because, again, it was probably only 25, 30 years ago. There was only one insurance company in China. So its starting position and the pace at which it grew its private insurance businesses is just a different place to everywhere else, or certainly in Europe, US, and places like Australia and Japan. So their starting point was in a very different place, and therefore the development of the industry happened when technology was there to really enable it.
Right.
And the quality of the individuals there in China then were able to take that technology and really use it. I mean, Ping An is a clear standout in terms of how they've really created ecosystems themselves end to end across different areas, whether it's healthcare or motor, where they've really looked at the whole value chain and said, how do they play a role in that? And I think fundamentally it's always been done with who is the customer and what journeys are they going through as a customer. And in this day and age now, with the technology we have around cloud computing and the use of data, they're able then to create the most seamless journey for people, not just about their insurance, but when they're buying a car, taking loans for a car, and then doing the insurance, and then also all the servicing and warranty around the insurance. So it's really, quite an incredible ecosystem. But I think we're still waiting to see that happen to that extent in other parts of the world, but it is happening in pockets.
Right. And so what do you see as the fourth phase? You talked about, the 3 phases you've observed. What's the next phase?
I think then the next phase definitely is going to incorporate AI has become a very big topic in the last 12 months. So it is definitely going to be about how does AI change how that interaction between consumers, the distributors, the insurers, and the broader ecosystem around the insurance services, how that changes. That I think is going to be at the heart of it, because the ability to do at speed and with great sophistication choices about what we offer customers, how we offer it, when we offer it, how we service them. I think that's going to dynamically change. And so I think we're still at the beginning of how and where that's going to happen, but that's going to be at the heart of it for sure.
Right. And are you starting to see some very real use cases starting to get implemented in the different ecosystems?
Yeah, in relation to AI, I think it's still quite early days for us. And we're also treading a careful path in terms of, this is all about customers' data, and it's all about using models to do some predictions and to put forward some answers and solutions. So we've got to get the balance between treating customers right and making sure whatever we're doing with customers is really fair to them.
Mm.
Yeah, I think we're seeing examples both in terms of how sales processes are happening and how recommendations to customers are really being fine-tuned to who that customer is and what they need at the time. I think also in the claims world, there's so much data that comes in that takes a lot of time to go through. We've seen examples of how we can really simplify that and make it much easier for our claims people to make quicker and better informed decisions.
So your point around data and customer data, right? Is there a lot of willingness that you see from customers to share their data with insurance companies in particular, to kind of allow us to use that data and then to be able to, like you said, right, offer them the right product at the right time?
I think it's always a challenge for, I think, the insurance market in general and to an extent financial service broadly. I think we still have work to do to continue to build trust with customers. I think Zurich has done a great thing several years ago. We were one of the first to issue a data commitment to customers that talks about how we will only use their data essentially for their good. We'll make sure it's safe and secure. So I think we have to continue to do more of that, and it can't be just Zurich. It has to be how the whole industry actually gives trust and confidence for customers to then enable them to feel more comfortable in sharing that. But look, we are always open and transparent about that, and so that when we're asking for data, we make sure that customers are able to understand why we're using that, and we carefully consider what we do and how we do that. So, but it's not an easy task. And you see every day, the kind of cyber incidents that occur across the world, and often includes very sensitive data that customers have provided to organizations that then could get released. So it's a really tricky topic, and one that we are very, very careful in what we do and how we go about that.
Yeah. And do you see regulators in the markets that we're operating in also kind of, tackling this topic of AI and data and the regulation and governance around it more actively?
The regulators all around the world are completely aware that this is a big topic, but it's a very challenging area to regulate. I mean, it definitely needs regulation. It definitely needs some consistent approaches to it so that things are done safely and securely. But I think it's an incredibly difficult thing to do. So I think both industry and regulators have to work hand in hand also with the large tech companies to say what is the best way to do this, so we don't prevent the opportunities that would lead to really good customer propositions and good things for customers.
Yeah.
But stops us going down certain paths, or certain parts in the industry going down certain paths that could be causing harm to consumers.
And you talked about the evolution, right, with respect to technology and the different phases that you've seen. What about in terms of customer expectations and interactions? You sort of alluded to it a little bit about, going direct versus disintermediation, etc. But what else have you seen over the last kind of 20 plus years in terms of how consumers are perceiving insurance, how they're thinking about insurance, and how they're interacting with insurers?
Yeah, I think like with all walks of life and all businesses, that consumers expect, much faster things, much easier things, always be able to do pretty much everything with their phones now. Anyway, so over that period, expectations have just become all along those themes of faster, easier, simpler, and being able to be done through the phone. I think if you look at, in the market where I came from, that introduction in the 2000s of being able to do some level of your insurance yourself through websites, whether it was initially just getting some quotes for things and then actually buying insurance and making claims and things like that, I think changed some dynamic between consumers, because they started to be empowered to do things themselves. But I think you still saw, agents and brokers and intermediaries are still around, and they were around because consumers got value from them, because in some ways they just wanted to deal with one person who could deal with all their different insurance needs, and sometimes broader than that. And I think that will continue. So I think it gave consumers choice about you can do it yourself, and if I want to do that, that's there. But if I want somebody else to take care of that, then that's also available to them as well. I think it also introduced intermediaries like aggregators, and there are, especially in the US, in the UK, there are a lot of these aggregators around, and I think consumers think they're their insurer, where in actual fact they're not. So I think that also completely transformed how certainly retail insurance is done in some of those markets.
Right. And just going back to your journey, right? Started in the UK, then moving to Singapore now. What's that been like, and how would you compare the evolution then of the UK market to some of the Asian markets that you've participated in?
Yeah, it's been quite a journey. I started, as we said, as a graduate trainee in the UK and in finance, and moved on to transformation operations and technology, and I've spent time at the group office doing some group transformations, and then the last 15 years plus of my career out in Asia. So seen quite a few different perspectives on how insurance plays out. I think the UK is a very advanced, sophisticated market, and always being quite leading in terms of some of the trends. We just spoke about it here in Asia. China has took a huge leap forward, and in many areas is more advanced in the use of cloud and data, and as we discussed, ecosystems. You've got very large insurance countries like Japan, who's kind of a mix of both. So they've got some very advanced ways of doing things, but also lots of the traditional ways around certainly how agency and things like that work still remain. Australia is a bit similar to the UK, some similar trends, but some really creative things, especially around the broker market there, and the way they've created connectivity between brokers and insurers has created a certain dynamic and a certain setup there. And then all across Southeast Asia, I would probably say the agents still dominate and banks play a huge role. but even in that space, it's really developing, especially with the digitization of the interaction between agents and customers and the banks and customers. And then on the banking side, the realization of how much data they have on customers, I think, is transforming how that insurance is working across Asia.
Right. Okay. And so what's kept you in insurance for so many years?
I mean, I think, well, from my point of view, that the opportunities I've been given to work in different countries, work on different projects and initiatives, there's always something that we're doing that is either transforming how we operate, how we provide services and propositions to customers. We've been fortunate as a company over the last many years to do quite a lot of M&A activity. So, looking for strategic opportunities and being successful on those and bringing those into the Zurich world is a really exciting, part of the world, part of the role. Sorry. I think ultimately, though, it's been around the people that I've worked for, either the leaders I've worked for, or the colleagues I work alongside, or the people who are working with me to help drive the tech and ops business. They're just a fantastic set of people, and I've from the start I've really liked Zurich. Has high integrity, high quality, high professionalism. Always wanted to do the right thing by customers, by our own people, and also the community, and that those kind of values are really important to me, and it feels like home. So
okay, that's very good to know. And if you were to think about it in terms of having spent your time with one company, how do you make sure you keep on top of what's best practice, what's best in class, right? What's the latest in your markets?
Yeah, I would say it's definitely easier in recent times. I mean, I must get invites for insurtech and fintech events. I think I could attend one every day if I wanted to, especially here in Singapore. It's every day. I think, and again, also the accessibility to, whether it's through LinkedIn Learning or through YouTube, or through through the internet is just full of sources of input and ways to keep yourself abreast of things. What I've also liked is I always like when we bring people in from other organizations, whether it's other insurers, but even more so when it's not people coming from non-insurance background.
Yeah.
I would always spend time talking to them and ask them about, well, what did you do and how did it work there? And I ask them, well, what's different here and what are we doing well and what we're not doing well? So I think it's just about being inquisitive and engaging with people who have got those other experiences and willing to really digest that and think about, what would we do differently? What would we change? And be willing to maybe, you thought you've been doing something really well and say, well, actually we needed to do either a lot better or do something in a different way. So to be open to challenge yourself and challenge what you think has been the best way of doing something. Yeah,
keeping your curiosity alive.
Absolutely, yeah.
You use the word transformation a lot, Matt. Whenever you were talking about the industry, or also when you were talking about Zurich, particularly, right, and the opportunities you've had to drive different types of transformations. So, what does transformation mean to you, and what have been, some of the most interesting transformations that you have driven in your role over the last couple of years?
Yeah, I mean, transformation to me is just fundamentally changing what you do and how we do things. Mostly some of the workflows and processes that we have, or how we engage and talk to customers, or what we provide to customers. So it's fundamentally rethinking what you're doing. And I guess that's for me why I probably moved from finance into the more tech and ops and transformation area, because it also is very tangible. You can really see how you were doing things before and how you're doing them now, and you can also you can measure and understand the impact it's having. So in terms of the transformations I've been involved in, across our region, we've done a lot with technology to create digital ways in which agents and brokers can really transact with us and engage with us. And there's examples across Hong Kong and Malaysia that come to mind where we've completely changed how that interaction happens and provided them with something that has led to significant growth over and above what our competitors have been able to do. Now, it's not all about the technology, but the technology has really enabled it. And the way when that's worked, it's worked because the business teams, the distribution teams, the underwriters, as well as the technology people have really got together and worked how best to use that technology. That means things are going to be much easier for those agents to work with us. And if you make it easy for the agents and simple for them to do business with us, then they're gonna work with you more and more.
Yeah, absolutely. It's kind of bringing everyone together with you in the journey, right? And like you said, technology is just an enabler to help us do that. And I think more recently, Zurich Edge feels like it's something transformative as well.
No, absolutely. I think I would say going through the Zurich Edge thing, we'd really spent the time on what I would call digitizing the traditional channels and the things we were already doing. So we were digitizing that engagement, but it was the same products and it was the same channels. But you could clearly see that customers were carrying on their life and transacting through their daily life with multiple consumer apps.
Right.
And insurance for me has to be in that ecosystem. It has to be in the daily lives of consumers so that you offer them propositions at the time it make most sense, not when the agent goes and visit them or whether they happen to be going to the bank or something. So for me, Edge is all about, look, we've got to access new customers in different and new ways, and that's engaging them as they are engaging in their daily life through apps and websites, and finding out when to put the right proposition at the right time to that customer, so that we have the highest chance of giving them the best protection and in a way that's simplest for them to do. So for me, that's what Edge is all about. And you have to rethink the products that we offer.
Yeah.
You have to rethink how you are going to engage with that customer. And also we have to approach different types of distribution partners. Often distribution partners that have never done insurance before, never thought about it before, but they have a large customer base who we could jointly work with to enhance the overall proposition that they're giving to those customers.
Yeah. And it also kind of helps you with our ambition around financial inclusion, right? Whether it's the new generation that may not actively be thinking around insurance or it's people who may not be able to afford really big ticket items but can protect themselves in small ways along the journey.
No, absolutely. I mean, we take a very traditional product in terms of home contents insurance that, my parents would buy, which would just protect to a certain level the contents they have in their house. Whereas nowadays, I think the younger generation might say, well, it's only a handful of items that I really care about.
Yeah.
And so whether it's their mobile phone devices or their computers or their bicycles, then we can say, well, rather than having this general overall protection, let's really target the things you really care about and actually do it when you're doing something with them. So make it very contextual to them. And that is much more relevant, I think, to a large section of the consumer segment today. Not just younger people, but also older generations might see that as a better proposition for them. So I think it's tailoring to the needs of people across different areas.
Yeah, and it goes back to what you were saying, right? This is kind of like the third phase of the ecosystem play that we're seeing. And now with the fourth phase, with the explosion of data and AI, it's only that we can kind of take this to the next level with maybe more sort of non-conventional partners that we can explore in the future.
Yeah, I think that's one of the really exciting bits is about just those non-traditional partners that we can engage with and start talking about how do we help your business grow and how do we help you provide a greater experience and a broader set of propositions to the customers you're engaging with. Because I think for all companies that are competing there out in the digital world, they need to offer things that others are not able to offer to be able to compete. And hopefully will include some insurance propositions that we can seamlessly help them integrate.
Yeah. So you've got your roadmap laid out for the next 26 years.
I don't know about 26 years, but certainly for the next, I have no plans to stop at the moment. So long as Zurich wants me to continue, I'm very happy to continue this journey. Yeah.
Okay. So any advice for people who are kind of just coming into insurance, thinking about joining the insurance industry or just driving transformations in insurance?
No, come and do it. I think it's I think it's a really interesting industry. I mean, our whole job is to help prevent people from having issues, but if they have issues, to be there when they really need someone to be there. And I think we've got so many great stories about how we've helped people in really difficult situations, whether it's, they've been in flooding or their house has been severely damaged or in critical accidents or illnesses.
Yeah.
I mean, that's what we do. We protect people from that. So I'd highly encourage people to be involved. And for me, in terms of the kind of advice I give to people who are just starting out on their career is, make sure you learn from everybody and anyone that's around. The more experience you have of things that work, but also things that don't work, I'd just say, just gather that experience. Don't worry so much about climbing the ladder and getting more senior roles and things like that in your early career.
Yeah.
Concern yourself with learning as much and absorbing as much information and getting as much experience as possible. Because for me, what I draw on mostly is the experiences I've had, whether they're things that have worked or not. That's what's really helped me. And then the other thing I'd say is just take the opportunities. Take the risk sometimes. I mean, we took quite a risk just moving from the UK to Switzerland in the first place. When my wife and my family, none of our family had left. They were still living in their home villages. So it was a leap to go to a different place. And then from Switzerland, we went to Beijing in the mid-2000s.
Where you didn't even speak the language.
No, I had to learn it a little bit. But no, I didn't speak it. So I think sometimes you just got to take those risks so long as you can see how it's going to provide you with something new and something different to learn. And also, I think you can see you can bring something as well.
Yeah.
So you have confidence that you can bring something to that role and enhance what's happening there. I think that's the advice I would give.
Yeah. And what about in terms of, sticking it out with one company versus what we see a lot of these days is quite rapid company switching that takes place, right?
Yeah, I mean, from my perspective, I think so long as you're getting opportunities that you want and you see the opportunity to grow and make a difference and be able to contribute, I was always able to see that here. I was always could get those opportunities. I wouldn't say they don't just land on your lap. You have to You have to seek them out. You have to be clear about what you want to do and where you might want to go and engage with the right people. You always clearly have to perform as well. So I think it's just grab those opportunities. I did throughout my career. I did at stages look outside. I did have conversations with people outside, but always concluded that the opportunity that I had internally was better than that. But I think it was always healthy to look outside and understand what is there. But then you make the choice that you think is best for you.
Okay, that's amazing. Well, thank you so much, Matt, for joining us and for sharing, the wisdom of how the industry has evolved and how it's going to continue to evolve, but also, giving us some advice on how to pointedly think about a career and also be curious as we do that. So thank you.
No problem. Thank you very much.